"This looks like something from the dollar store." That's what my granddaughter said. Not in private, not gently. She said it in front of 60 guests, under chandeliers, while holding up the gift I spent 3 weeks making like it was a joke. A doll. Knitted, with stiff fingers and aching hands. A doll that looked like her. A doll I sewed something inside. My diamond pendant. The one Harold gave me on our 50th anniversary. The only piece of him I kept after the funeral. She didn't know it was inside. And if she did, I don't think she'd care. She laughed. Loud. Cruel. "Grandma, we registered at Saks," she said. "This is just embarrassing." The room laughed with her. Someone clapped. My son, her father, just smiled with a glass of champagne in his hand. I stood there with my hand still out, the empty box at my feet. No one said a word to stop her. No one stepped in. And that was the moment. Not when they insulted me. Not even when they humiliated me. It was when I realized they weren't sorry. That was the moment I stopped pretending they loved me. And the moment I started planning what I would take back. 3 weeks before that party, I sat at my kitchen table, a half-finished doll in my lap, and a heating pad wrapped around my lower back. It was the kind of day where the wind rattled the windows, and every joint in my fingers screamed for mercy. I kept knitting. The yarn was soft, pale blue for Samantha's dress, charcoal for Eric's suit. I worked from a pattern I found years ago, one I'd used for baby dolls and anniversary gifts. This time, I stitched carefully around a hollow space in Samantha's chest. The pendant would go there, my diamond. Harold's last big gesture before cancer swallowed him whole. I remember Samantha's voice a year ago, running her finger along the chain. "You still wear this?" "Yes. It's beautiful. If I ever get married, I'd love something like this." And she smiled, the real kind. Not the one she wears for Instagram. That smile stayed with me. I believed it. So I planned the gift like it mattered. I picked wrapping paper from a little shop where Samantha worked in college. Floral print, just like the notebooks she used to cover in stickers. I thought she'd notice. I thought it would make her feel seen. That's what stings now. I wasn't some confused old woman handing out trinkets. I was trying to honor a memory. Hers and mine. I poured time into every stitch, even when my knuckles locked, and I had to take breaks to soak my hands in warm water. I wrapped the box slowly, carefully. I even taped a note under the lid, just in case. "You always had Grandpa's heart. Now you have the diamond, too." I thought she'd cry when she opened it. I thought she'd hug me. But she didn't even open the doll. She never got that far. And now that memory of me sitting at the kitchen table with the radio humming and the sunlight hitting Harold's photo on the wall, it stained every part of it. The paper, the yarn, the effort. Stained by her voice saying the word cheap. That night, after the party, I sat at the same table. The radio was off. The room felt smaller, colder. I reached into the drawer, pulled out the wrapping paper leftovers, and folded them into neat squares. I couldn't bring myself to throw them out. Not yet. But something had shifted inside me. I didn't have a word for it yet. But I would. It wasn't sadness. It was something sharper. It wasn't just the party. That night, I sat in my robe, staring out the kitchen window at nothing, and the memories started lining up like soldiers. Like the time I wore Harold's cufflinks to a family dinner, the silver ones with the tiny emeralds he got in Portugal. Samantha looked at them, then at me, and smirked. "Wow," she said. "Did Grandpa leave you all the men's accessories too?" Everyone laughed. I laughed too, like a fool, pretended I didn't hear the way she emphasized men's. Then there was the time Daniel told me I should start thinking about assisted living. Said it casually, like he was talking about the weather. "You could sell the house, Mom. You don't need all that space. Use the money to simplify. You could still do your knitting or whatever." Whatever. They didn't see me anymore. I was a burden with a basement full of stuff they'd already started calling clutter. And last summer, Melissa changed the locks on the family beach house, claimed it was for insurance reasons. I found out when I drove up for the weekend and couldn't get inside. I called, confused, thinking something was wrong. She sounded annoyed. "Oh, didn't Daniel tell you? We're redoing the upstairs. Figured it was time for a more modern look. The beach house. The one Harold and I bought with our first real savings. The one we scattered his ashes behind, near the dune grass he loved. The one I still pay the property tax on. No one asked me. They just took it, like I was already gone." I told myself I was being too sensitive. That's what they always say, isn't it? That older women get emotional, that we misunderstand. But after that birthday party, no. I didn't misunderstand anything. They had stopped seeing me as a person. They saw a wallet, a woman alone with a valuable house and soft boundaries. That night, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror and looked hard at my face. My gray hair, my deep lines, the skin under my chin, all of it still mine. And I said, out loud, "They think I'm weak." I said it again, louder. "They think I'm weak." And then I laughed, because they'd mistaken silence for surrender. And that was their mistake. I didn't cry that night, not even once. What I did do around 2 a.m. was go to the linen closet, the one no one ever thinks to open, and pull out the old safe box Harold and I used to keep locked behind the towels. Still heavy, still cold, still ours. I carried it to the dining table, turned on the overhead light, and sat down with my back straight and my breath steady. The key was taped to the underside of the silverware drawer, same place it had been for 20 years. The lock clicked open like it remembered me. Inside, everything was as we'd left it. Deeds, bank information, Harold's letters, copies of our wills, my name, everywhere it mattered. But as I flipped through the folders, something stopped me cold. There was a document I didn't recognize. A single sheet tucked between the property tax files and Harold's last handwritten note. Yellowed, folded once. No label. I opened it, stared. It was a wedding venue contract. Lake Michigan Estate, scheduled for next June, under event sponsor, Margaret Lewis. I blinked hard. No, I'd never signed this. I'd never even seen this. Then I saw the signature line, a crooked version of my name. Someone had forged it. The names listed under bride and groom, Samantha Lewis and Eric Wallace. There it was, in black and white. They were planning to use my house, my late husband's final resting place, without even telling me, without asking me. And whoever sent this paper here, whoever had access to this safe, they'd wanted me to find it eventually, or they thought I never would. I sat back, the edges of the paper trembling in my hands. This wasn't just disrespect, this was planned. They were counting on my silence, counting on me to be too confused, or too weak, or too tired to check the fine print. But I wasn't tired anymore. I wasn't even angry yet. That would come later. Right now, I felt something much cleaner. Clarity. They forgot that behind every nice old woman is a version of herself she had to bury to survive. I was done burying her. The phone rang at 6:42 a.m. I was still sitting at the dining table, the forged contract open in front of me. My tea had gone stone cold, untouched. I didn't recognize the number right away, but when I answered, I heard a voice I hadn't expected. Not after last night. "Grandma?" It was Ethan, my grandson, Samantha's younger brother, Daniel's son, the quiet one. I braced myself, but then he said, "I'm sorry for what she did to you." I should have said something. My throat tightened. I hadn't cried since I left the party, but that nearly did it. "I saw her toss the doll aside like it was a used napkin," he said. And when Dad laughed, God, I couldn't believe it. "I appreciate you calling." I managed, but then his voice changed. Lower, urgent. "There's something else. I found something in Dad's office last week. I was printing my FAFSA stuff, and a bunch of documents were still in the tray." My stomach turned. "What kind of documents?" "A wedding contract, Lake Michigan property. Your name was listed under financial responsibility, but it didn't look like your signature, so I took pictures." The photo came through while we were still talking. I opened it, and my heart kicked hard. It was the same contract I found in the safe, same date, same forged signature, But this copy had a handwritten note in Daniel's script. Lock down property before loan call. Eric needs confirmation on collateral. Collateral. I read it twice, then a third time. Ethan, I said slowly, who's Eric? Samantha's fiancé. And what kind of loan call would he be getting? Ethan exhaled. Grandma. Eric's startup crashed 2 months ago. He's in massive debt. Samantha told Dad they need a stable asset to secure a consolidation loan. The estate's in your name, so they're using my house to get him out of debt and host the wedding, Ethan added bitterly. That's the spin. A family gathering at a house they're planning to hand to a bank. I stared at the photo on my phone, that ugly forged signature, the scribbled note about collateral. Samantha didn't just want a sentimental wedding on Grandpa's land. She wanted leverage. She wanted my house so her fiancé could climb out of the financial hole he dug. And Daniel, my own son, was helping her do it, not with my blessing, not on my bones. I didn't go back to bed. After Ethan hung up, I just sat there in the morning silence, my hands wrapped around a cup of tea I never drank, watching the light shift on the kitchen wall. So that was it. It wasn't just a wedding. It wasn't about family or legacy or sentiment. It was about leverage. My house, my name, my dead husband's ashes, resting under dune grass in memory. They wanted to trade all of that in, like chips on a poker table. I thought about Harold, about how carefully he'd handled everything, the way he used to double-check every contract, every line. I remember once he said, "You don't lose your house overnight. You give it away piece by piece until you look up and realize you have nothing left." I finally understood what he meant, and I had to decide, right then, if I was going to be the woman who kept knitting while the wolves picked my bones clean, or the one who closed the gate. I stood up. My knees protested, but I didn't care. I opened the hall closet and pulled down the fireproof lockbox from the top shelf. Inside, extra copies of Harold's will, our marriage license, my power of attorney forms, insurance, the deed in my name only. I laid everything out on the table like a war map. I called Charles Becker, Harold's estate lawyer, and left a message. I didn't stutter. I didn't ask politely. This is Margaret Lewis. I need to schedule a legal consultation regarding property fraud and potential asset exploitation. It's urgent. Then I opened a new notebook and wrote down 3 things. Stop the transfer. Block access to all shared accounts. Document everything. And then I wrote the final line in big block letters, just to make it real. I will not be stolen from. Because that's what this was. Not a misunderstanding. Not a family dispute. Theft. Premeditated. Deliberate. Coated in birthday cake and gift bags and phony smiles. I had spent my life believing that kindness would be returned. That if I stayed quiet, people would take care of me, like I took care of them. I was done believing that. No more vague feelings. No more waiting for someone else to fix it. From this moment on, I had one goal: protect the estate, reclaim my dignity, and make sure none of them, not Daniel, not Melissa, not Samantha, ever get to touch what Harold and I built. They wanted to use my house for a wedding? They were about to watch me burn the whole guest list. The email arrived at 10:16 a.m. subject line. Lake House wedding, just need your okay, from Samantha. Like nothing had happened, like she hadn't humiliated me in a room full of strangers 2 nights ago. The message read, "Hi Grandma, super excited for the June plans. It's going to be magical. Attached are the vendor invoices you asked for. Let me know if anything jumps out or needs adjusting. Tent rental's a bit higher than expected. Beach weddings, right? P.S. We'll need your signature on the bottom of the attached contract update for venue access." Eric said to thank you again for being so generous. I stared at it. There was no, "Thank you." No, "Is this still okay?" Just assumptions, fake warmth, and 6 attachments. I opened them one by one. A catering invoice, $12,475. Tent and furniture rental, $4,890. A vague design enhancement invoice, $7,600, for light interior styling of beachfront rooms. And then, the venue contract. Location: Lake Michigan Estate event date. June 14th, responsible party. Margaret Lewis payment terms. Owner will cover all site prep and associated venue costs. At the bottom, my name, signed in slanted script, the same strange loop on the G, the same uneven M I saw in Ethan's photo. A forgery. They weren't just planning to use the estate, they'd already booked it, assigned me as the financial backer, and submitted a signature I never gave. And now, Samantha was treating this like some formality, a little check-in before she finished spending my money. I didn't reply. I got to work. I created a folder and labeled it Fraud Wedding. I printed everything, the emails, the contracts, every invoice. I highlighted my fake signature and underlined the line that made me legally responsible. Then I opened my desk drawer and found my old bank records, utilities, anything that showed my real signature from recent years. I was going to prove it. Every mismatch, every line they forged, every penny they tried to assign to me. I would collect it all. By noon, the paper trail on my kitchen table looked like a crime scene. The forged contract, the invoices, the email from Samantha, chirpy and arrogant, my own name scribbled in someone else's hand. Again, they hadn't even tried to be subtle. I didn't need confirmation to know it was fake, but I needed proof, legal proof. So I grabbed the documents, slid them into Harold's old leather briefcase, and dialed the number I hadn't called in over a decade. Charles Becker's office. A voice answered. "This is Margaret Lewis," I said. Charles knew my husband, Harold Lewis. "I need an appointment. Today, if possible." The pause on the other end told me they remembered the name. 10 minutes later, they called back. "Mr. Becker will see you at 2:15. His office was on the 6th floor of a brick building downtown. No logo, no glass walls, just a gold plaque that read Becker and Haynes Estates and Trusts. Old money. Quiet money. The kind that didn't advertise. When I walked in, Charles stood up from behind his desk like I was someone worth standing for. "Margaret," he said, "you look exactly the same." "Liar," I said, and shook his hand. He waved me into a chair and waited until the door was shut. "What brings you in?" I opened the briefcase and slid the documents across the table. The contract, the invoices, the fake signature. I didn't ramble. I didn't try to soften the blow. My granddaughter forged my name. They're using my Lake Michigan property for a wedding I never agreed to. And worse, they're leveraging it to secure a loan for her fiancé. Charles put on his glasses. He didn't interrupt once. When he got to the signature, he let out a soft breath. "You didn't sign this." "No." "Can you provide me with recent, verified examples of your signature?" "Yes," I said, already reaching into the folder. "Tax documents, bank letters, property filings." He flipped through each one slowly, then leaned back in his chair. "They made mistakes," he said. "Multiple. The spacing, the baseline tilt, even the M is wrong." I looked at him carefully. "Can we prove it?" He nodded. "With a handwriting expert, absolutely. But we'll start with a preliminary analysis and get a sworn affidavit. I've seen this before, unfortunately." I looked him in the eye. "I want this documented. I want a file started, and I want you to tell me how far we can take it." Charles smiled then, not kindly, strategically. "I can do all of that. But let me ask you first. Do you want this quiet or public?" I smiled back. "Let's keep it quiet until I decide it's not." The call came the next morning. I was stirring oatmeal on the stove when Daniel's name lit up my phone. I didn't pick up. He called again an hour later. The third time, I answered. "Hi, Mom," he said, voice warm. Too warm, like we hadn't spoken in months. Like he hadn't stood by while Samantha humiliated me at her party. "I was just thinking about you," he said. "Melissa and I had an idea, actually. Can we come by later today?" I waited. "About what?" "Nothing urgent, just some family stuff. Wanted to talk in person." I agreed, but kept the call short. They arrived at 3:45 p.m. sharp, dressed like they were headed to brunch. Melissa had a bakery box in hand. Lemon tarts, my favorite. I didn't touch them. We sat in the living room, sunlight pouring through the windows. Harold installed himself. Melissa was all smiles. "We've been meaning to check in on you. Things have been so busy with Samantha's wedding coming up." I nodded slowly. "I hear it's going to be quite the event." "Oh yes," Daniel said. "She's poured her heart into it." There it was, the opening line, the setup. Then Daniel leaned forward, clasping his hands. "Listen, Mom, there's something Melissa and I wanted to propose." "Go on." He cleared his throat. "We've been thinking about your future. You've got that big house on the lake, all that maintenance, and we know how important family gatherings are to you. So what if we helped you set up a trust for the Lake Michigan property?" My hands went still in my lap. Melissa jumped in. "It would just make things easier long term. You could still visit, of course, but the house would be part of a family legacy. Samantha's kids, future holidays, that kind of thing. A gift," Daniel added smoothly, "from you to them. That's how you always raised us, with generosity. A gift. A house they already tried to steal through forged paperwork, now wrapped in a pretty little bow and served up like I was the one offering." I tilted my head. "And who would manage this trust?" "Well," Daniel said, "we'd help with the logistics, keep it streamlined." Melissa placed a crisp white folder on the table. "We had some paperwork drafted just to give you a visual." I didn't touch it. Instead, I looked Daniel in the eye. "Who paid the deposit for Samantha's wedding?" He blinked. "What?" "I didn't." "So who did?" He smiled. The kind of smile men wear when they think they're still in control. "We just need your blessing, Mom, that's all." I smiled back. "You already forged my blessing once. You won't get it twice." His face changed. I didn't feel right after that last call. Not because I was scared. That part had passed. It was the spinning. My brain couldn't stop turning over every detail, every document, every lie. I kept replaying Daniel's face when I said the word forgery. I kept hearing Samantha's voice at the party. "This looks like something from the dollar store." My chest felt tight, like something was sitting on it. By the next day, I couldn't ignore the headache anymore, or the buzzing behind my eyes, so I went to the hospital. I made an appointment with Dr. Hawley, my GP for the last 20 years. She squeezed me in just before lunch. He took one look at me and frowned. "You're pale," he said, "and your heart rate's high." Then he strapped the cuff around my arm and went quiet. Twice he checked it, once with a machine, then manually. "Your blood pressure's 168 over 102. I blinked. "That's not normal, is it?" "No, Margaret, that's dangerously high." I tried to laugh it off. "Maybe I've just had a stressful week." He didn't smile. "Stress can kill you, Margaret. I need you to hear me. We're not talking about headaches or sleepless nights. We're talking about stroke risk, heart attack." I stared at the floor. The tile had a crack running through it, right under the exam table. I stared at it like it could give me an answer. "I don't feel angry," I said, more to myself than him. "I feel awake. I feel like I'm finally seeing things clearly." He nodded. "And sometimes clarity hurts worse than ignorance." He gave me a prescription, mild for now, but he made me promise to monitor it. Cut salt, walk daily, reduce stress. I almost laughed at that last part. Reduce stress. When your son is forging your name, when your granddaughter is selling your property to bail out her fiancé, when your whole family has decided you're old enough to rob, but not worth listening to. I left the clinic and sat in my car with the windows rolled down, trying to breathe. The air smelled like fried food and exhaust, normal things, regular things. But I didn't feel normal. I felt like my own blood was turning against me. I always thought betrayal was emotional, sad, maybe a little bitter. I didn't know it could be physical, that it could throb in your chest, ring in your ears, tighten your jaw until you tasted metal. I sat there and whispered to myself, "You are not dying for these people." And I meant it. I called Charles Becker the next morning. "Are you ready to move?" I asked. "I've been ready since you walked into my office," he said. So we did. He set up a meeting under the pretense of finalizing the family trust, the same bait Daniel and Melissa dangled in my living room. I used their words, their language, their exact phrasing, told them it was time to make things official. "I've spoken to Mr. Becker," I said on the family group chat, the one they never bothered to remove me from. I agree it's time to formalize the legacy plan for the Lake Michigan property. He'd like all involved parties present. The replies came fast. Melissa, wonderful. So glad we're all on the same page. Samantha, yay. This will be so good for the family long term. Daniel, proud of you, Mom. You're doing the right thing. They had no idea they were walking into a controlled detonation. The meeting was scheduled for Thursday at 3 p.m. at Becker's office. Just like last time. Quiet lobby, frosted glass door, not a place you'd walk into without a tie or a reason. In the days leading up to it, I prepared. Charles had already started drafting a sworn affidavit of forgery based on the signature analysis. He'd pulled in a handwriting expert to review the contracts. I gave him everything I had: Ethan's photos, the bank login attempts, the invoices, the emails. He didn't say it out loud, but I could tell this case was airtight. We arranged the boardroom, not dramatic, just official, one folder in front of each seat. Inside, copies of the forged documents, side by side with real examples of my signature. We left Samantha's wedding invoice on the table too, the one with the venue listed under my name and the little heart emoji she'd signed next to her initials. Charles asked me, "Do you want to tell them everything at once, or piece by piece?" "Piece by piece," I said. "I want to watch them try to keep up." He smiled at that. As I walked out of his office that day, I felt it again. That sense I hadn't felt in years. Not since Harold got sick. Control. Not fear. Not confusion. Just control. Calm. Absolute. They thought I was the prey in this story. They forgot I'd been the one setting the table my whole life. Now I was pulling out the chairs. The next day, they all arrived within 10 minutes of each other. Daniel and Melissa came first, dressed for the part, polished but not showy, like parents of the bride who want to look generous but not wealthy. Melissa brought a leather folder, trying to look prepared. Daniel carried nothing. Just that smug, practiced smile he's perfected over the years, the one he used when he lied to his high school principal about breaking a neighbor's window. Samantha walked in next, arm in arm with Eric. Eric was taller than I remembered. Or maybe it was the suit. Too slick, too expensive. Bought on credit, no doubt. Samantha kissed my cheek like nothing had happened. "Grandma, you look lovely," she said, like I was already an honored guest at her dream wedding. Ethan came in last. Alone. He nodded at me, eyes steady, jaw tight, the only person in that room who'd actually told the truth. Charles entered from the adjoining room, dressed in a deep navy suit with gold cufflinks. He shook hands like a man who already knew what the outcome would be. Once everyone was seated, he smiled warmly. "Thank you all for coming. Today is about ensuring Margaret's wishes are carried out with clarity and legality." Melissa leaned forward. "We're just so happy she's ready to put everything in writing. It'll be such a relief to have it all handled, formally." "Absolutely," Charles said smoothly, "which is why we've prepared a summary of all recent activity tied to the Lake Michigan estate. Each of you has a folder in front of you." They opened them. Silence. Daniel's smile froze. Melissa's brows twitched. Samantha didn't even register what she was looking at. Not at first. She flipped through, confused, like the pages were upside down. Then she saw the copy of her own email, the one with the venue attachments and the little emoji hearts. Eric leaned over her shoulder, mouth tightening. "Is this?" he whispered. Charles kept his tone calm. "What you're holding are signed documents listing Margaret Lewis as the financial sponsor of a wedding venue she never agreed to, with a signature that has been verified by a legal analyst as fraudulent." Daniel coughed once. This must be a misunderstanding. Sit down," I said, flat and quiet. He froze. Melissa tried to recover. "Maybe someone submitted the forms incorrectly. There's no need to overreact." Charles raised one hand. "Mrs. Lewis has already filed a preliminary affidavit. All evidence presented here will be forwarded for review under elder financial abuse statutes." Samantha dropped her folder. Eric looked like he wanted to disappear. I looked around that polished, frozen room and thought, now we're telling the truth. I didn't need to drag it out. I could have gone page by page, shown them the mismatched signatures, the login attempts, the invoices, The photos Ethan found in Daniel's printer tray. But why bother? They knew. I knew. Charles knew. What mattered now wasn't what they did. It was what I'd already done. I waited until every eye in the room came back to me. Then I folded my hands on the table. I've sold the house. Dead silence. Even Charles paused, like he wanted to let the words settle in. Daniel blinked. You what? The Lake Michigan estate, I said, slow and even. As of 9 o'clock this morning, it's no longer mine. The sale closed. Cash buyer. Funds have already cleared. Melissa's jaw dropped. Samantha sat bolt upright. No, she said. You can't do that. We already. I can? I interrupted, because it was in my name. Sole ownership. You'd know that if you'd ever asked, instead of forging my signature and trying to use the property as loan collateral for a man you've known for 3 minutes. Eric flinched like I'd slapped him. Melissa was shaking her head, still caught in the fog. You didn't even talk to us. I wasn't obligated to. Daniel looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 seconds. Where did the money go? Charles spoke this time, calm, crisp. All proceeds were wired to an account solely owned by Margaret, set up under a private trust. Untouchable. Samantha stood up. We already planned everything there. We've booked vendors. And used my name to do it, I said. You'll have to tell them the venue's no longer available. Maybe Eric's startup money can cover the cancellation fees. Eric opened his mouth, then closed it. Charles clasped his hands. Any attempt to reclaim the property, legally or through influence, will be met with a full fraud complaint. I'm sure your counsel will advise you accordingly. They all looked stunned. Caught. Like toddlers caught with chocolate on their hands, still denying they touched the cake. I didn't gloat. I just looked at each of them, one by one, and said, You treated me like I was already gone. But I've been here, watching, listening, planning. Samantha sat back down, hard. Daniel didn't say another word. Melissa finally looked at me. Not with contempt, but with fear. And that, finally, was the right emotion. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Samantha burst into tears. Loud, ugly sobs. The kind you don't expect from a grown woman in designer heels. She covered her face with both hands and choked out the same line over and over. Where are we going to get married now? Eric didn't comfort her. He didn't even touch her. He just stared down at the table, the wedding invoices, the heart emoji she'd sent me in that smug little email. Then he looked at me, and I saw it in his eyes. Embarrassment, not just for himself, for all of them. Daniel stood up, slowly, like a man trying to pretend he still had dignity. This isn't how family handles things, Mom. I looked at him. No, it's how people handle thieves. His mouth tightened, but he didn't argue. Melissa stayed seated, her fingers still resting on the unopened trust paperwork they brought. I don't think she even blinked. She just kept staring at the folder like if she focused hard enough, the last 20 minutes would disappear. Who did you sell it to? She asked, voice flat. I don't owe you that information, I replied. Eric finally spoke. You should have talked to us. I turned to him. You mean before or after your name showed up on financial documents tied to my property? He had no answer, just silence. Charles let the room settle, then said what needed to be said. Calm. Final. From this point forward, all communication regarding this matter should go through my office. Mrs. Lewis is no longer engaging in direct negotiations with any of you. Samantha was still crying. This isn't fair. It was supposed to be my day. And it still can be, I said. Just not on land you tried to steal. She looked at me then, really looked, like she was seeing me for the first time in years. And I could tell. She hated that I wasn't the soft, simple old woman she decided I was. She hated that I'd outplayed her. But more than anything, she was scared. Scared of what else I might take. They all left within minutes, one by one. No hugs, no fake smiles, no parting shots, just silence. Ethan stayed behind. He helped me gather the folders, neatly and without a word. When we walked to the elevator, he said, they didn't expect any of this. I smiled faintly. They expected me to knit them wedding dolls, he smiled back. But instead, I said, I gave them consequences. By the next morning, Charles Becker had filed the official fraud complaint with the state attorney's office. He didn't bluff. He included everything: the forged signatures, Ethan's photos, the invoices, the bank login attempts, even Samantha's email with the little heart emojis. It was airtight. And once it hit the system, everything started unraveling fast. The first call came from the florist, not to me, to Samantha. They wanted confirmation on the venue. She couldn't give it. Then the tent company followed, the caterer, the interior designers, all asking one question: is this wedding still happening? The answer, for once, was honest. No. Samantha and Eric tried to reschedule. They tried to secure a new venue, but suddenly the deposits were locked up, and the new places? Too expensive. Too fast. Worse, word got out. Fast. Eric's family, the ones who hosted her birthday party, the ones who laughed when she called my gift cheap, they heard about the forged documents, the fraud complaint, the missing venue. They weren't laughing anymore. From what Ethan told me, Eric's father was livid. You married into a lawsuit, he reportedly told his son. Fix it or you're on your own. That same week, the truth about Daniel and Melissa's finances surfaced. But I wasn't happy. Something hurt inside me. Not my joints, not my blood pressure. That's under control now. It's a different ache. Samantha never wanted it to end this way. Even after all they did, the signatures, the lies, the smirks, I never wanted to hurt Samantha. Not really. I loved her. That part's the hardest to explain. I didn't love the version of her that stood at her birthday party holding that doll like it was trash. I didn't love the woman who called my husband's pendant cheap or who forged my name like it was nothing. But I loved the girl she used to be, the one who ran barefoot down the beach, the one who sat on my lap in the old rocker and asked if Harold and I would still be in love when we were ghosts. That girl never came back, and I don't think she will. I won. That's what Charles said later. You protected your assets. You did the right thing. I suppose he's right. But sitting here in this quiet apartment, sipping tea no one asks me to refill, I can tell you, winning doesn't feel good. It just feels final. Still, I made a choice, one they don't know about. I had Charles set up 2 long-term trusts, not for Daniel, not for Melissa, not for Samantha or even Ethan, for their children. If they ever have any. Strict conditions. 10 years locked. Not a penny to be touched unless those future grandchildren show proof of their own earned life. Work, school, no debt. And even then, it'll be just enough to help, not enough to spoil. Samantha doesn't deserve it. But I also won't waste what Harold and I built. That money, it's not revenge. It's a seed, buried deep enough that only someone honest will ever find it. The doll sits on my bookshelf now, cleaned, mended. The pendant still hidden inside. Samantha threw it away like it meant nothing. But it meant everything. She just wasn't ready for it.